We're all taught that money buys freedom. It's why we chase ideas like financial independence and early retirement, as if wealth will unlock the life we really want. But there's a massive flaw in this equation. The real bottleneck to freedom isn't money, it's time. And what buys time? Health, because time, true meaningful time, is only valuable if you have the health to enjoy it. Science backs this up. As your biological health span shrinks, your capacity to do what matters most shrinks with it. Your mobility declines, your brain fogs, your energy flatlines. You see this everywhere. People who've made it financially, but now trade that wealth for doctor's visits, treatments, and lost years. They've bought their freedom at too great a cost. I'm Dr. Hilary Lynn, and in today's episode, we're going to unpack why health, not wealth, is the real currency of a life well lived. We'll explore how our health and well-being status, not our bank accounts, are our greatest assets. And I'll share the science-backed strategies to invest in your well-being now so you can reap compounding returns for decades to come. And by the end, we'll talk about the Health is Wealth framework to build and protect your most valuable assets so that you can spend your time with the people you love, doing the things you love for as long as possible, because that's the true definition of freedom. When it comes to our health, we don't have the same luxuries as we do with our finances. If we miss a chance to invest in the next Facebook, we can usually make up for it later. But with our bodies, the window of opportunity actually narrows with every passing year. Don't get me wrong, our bodies are incredible. With the right care, they can rebound from a lot of damage. We all know this after a tough night drinking or perhaps eating a bunch of junk food. With the right care, with the right resilience, our bodies will bounce back. But as we age, the cost of neglecting our health skyrockets. Let's talk about sarcopenia, or age-related muscle loss. In our 30s, it's hardly on our radar. But if you fast forward a few decades, that minor loss of muscle mass can escalate into serious frailty, robbing us of our strength and independence. It's a similar story with sleep. Burning the midnight oil in our 20s, drinking heavily while fueling yourself with Doritos might feel like a victimless crime. But over time, that sleep debt can snowball into a host of chronic diseases. And those little aches and pains that we brush off, they have a way of morphing into major mobility issues when they are left unchecked. So think of your health like a retirement account, one that pays out if you start investing early and often. Just like compound interest in finances needs time to work its magic, our healthy habits need a long runway to deliver their full benefits. So the sooner we start prioritizing regular movement, wholesome foods, and quality sleep, the more we'll get back in the long run, not just in years, but in vitality. Same as in finance, diversification matters. You don't want to put all your money in one stock. So the same goes for our health. We need a balanced portfolio that covers all our bases. And just to cover a few of the foundational bases, we have sleep, our nightly recovery fund that restores every cell in our body, movement, which is like a muscle K that pays out in lifelong strength and mobility, nutrition, which is a savings plan that keeps away chronic illnesses, keeps our bodies resilient, stress management, which is resilient against all of the ravages of chronic stress, mentally and physically. And no matter when you start, it's never too late to start turning things around. I've seen people in their 60s and in their 70s make incredible comebacks with the right interventions. It might take a bit more work than if they started in their 30s, but the body's capacity for recovery is truly astounding. And the best part is, you don't have to overhaul your entire life to start seeing returns. Small investments compound over time. An extra hour of deep sleep starting tonight and then making it every single night for the rest of your life will compound to extraordinary returns in a few decades. The flip side is also true. The longer we wait to prioritize our well-being, the harder it will be to catch up. You wouldn't expect to build a hefty nest egg by socking away a few bucks in our final working years, and you can't expect to undo decades of health neglect with a crash diet and a week of better sleep. So keep that in mind as you're making your New Year's resolutions. 10 years ago. The best time to start investing in your health was early in your life, in your childhood. But the second best time is right now. Not next week, not next year, not after another birthday milestone. It's right now. Now let's bring in another framework that I like to talk about. I like to talk about health in terms of energy analogies. So in a global sense, we've got two main categories, non-renewable and renewable sources of energy. Take fossil fuels, for instance. They're the quintessential non-renewable resource. We burn them once, get a quick burst of energy, and poof, they're gone. So we enjoy this short-term power surge, but we pay for it with long-term consequences like pollution, depletion, and eventual system breakdown. Renewable energy, on the other hand, think of solar, wind, hydro. They operate on a fundamentally different principle. These resources regenerate naturally, providing sustainable power for as long as we invest in the infrastructure to harness them. Now, what if I told you that our bodies operate on the exact same premise? So, starting with a non-renewable analogy. So, this is the mode that most of us default to when life is hectic. We skimp on sleep to meet a deadline, we lean on caffeine to power through an afternoon slump, or let our stress simmer unchecked until it boils over. In the moment, these shortcuts feel like real time savers. We get that quick hit of energy, a momentary surge of productivity, like burning a lump of coal. But over time, we're depleting our reserves, taxing our mitochondria, revving up our inflammation, and flooding our system with stress hormones like cortisol. That second wind we're relying on us to get through the week, it comes at a steep biological price tag, especially if you keep doing it over and over. Non-renewable energy, by definition, doesn't replenish itself. The same thing goes for non-renewable health. When we're running on empty, bouncing back gets harder and harder. Brain fog will settle in like a heavy mist, fatigue clings to us, and what used to feel like an occasional off day becomes a new normal. Now, let's talk about renewable sources of energy and health. This is a totally different ballgame. This is the type of vitality our bodies are designed to generate naturally day after day if we give them the right raw materials. Take sleep, for example. It's not just downtime. It's actually active recovery where our cells are repairing themselves, our hormone balance is resetting, and our brains are flushing out accumulated toxins. Or physical movement. It's not just a way to burn calories. You're not just trying to generate heat. It's actually a stimulus that creates more health energy by making our mitochondria stronger and more efficient. Nutrition is not just fuel. It's actually a steady stream of building blocks our bodies can use to combat inflammation, regulate metabolism, and maintain optimal function. So when we prioritize healthy habits like the restorative sleep, regular movement, nourishing food, and effective stress management, we're essentially installing a renewable energy infrastructure in our own bodies. These habits are like internal solar panels, wind turbines, and hydroelectric dams. They harness that power of our biology to generate sustainable, long-lasting vitality. That's how we get from surviving to thriving. And the real magic is renewable health begets more renewable health and well-being. So the more you invest in that health infrastructure that is renewable, the more vitality we'll have to draw on tomorrow. And that surplus health spills over into every area of our lives. Our relationships improve, our work ethic, our work improves, our creativity, our capacity for even joy and fulfillment will improve. But renewable energy and renewable health are not easy. So just like clean energy infrastructure requires intentional planning and consistent upkeep, our biological vitality demands proactive nurturing. Skipping a night of sleep here and there might not feel like a big deal right now, but it shortchanges us in the long term. And letting exercise slide for a week or two might feel harmless, but then sooner or later, we're going to wake up and realize we've lost the strength and mobility we took for granted. So it's all about starting early and being consistent to build that resilient health infrastructure that is renewable every single day. So we've got this one shot at life. Let's power it with an energy, health, life source that will take us the distance, not a quick fix that just fizzles out, especially when we need it most. Renewable vitality is within reach. All we have to do is start building today. Now I want to talk about tackling the biggest risk first, the lowest hanging fruit to get the best ROI. So when it comes to building financial wealth, any savvy advisor will tell you to prioritize the big levers first. That doesn't mean cutting out your Netflix subscription. It means tackling your high interest debt, plugging the major leaks in your budget, like gambling or major purchases that are not recommended, and funneling your dollars instead towards investments with the highest potential upside. The same exact strategy applies to our health investment. Before we lose ourselves in the weeds of micro optimizations and biohacking fads, we need to zoom out and address the major risk factors that pose the greatest threats to our vitality and our longevity. The leading drivers of death and disability in our society are cardiovascular disease, cancer, stroke, metabolic disorders, accidental injuries, and mental health breakdowns. These are not just simply whims of some cosmic lottery. These are the cumulative results of discrete biological breakdowns that often fly under the radar for decades. But the great news is, for the most part, the catastrophic endpoints are preventable. So let's talk about how to take strategic action to reduce our greatest risk factors and get the best ROI for our health. First, we've got heart disease. Cardiovascular disease is the ultimate silent assassin. It's not a single event like a heart attack, but rather a stealthy erosion that begins early in our childhood. We're talking about chronic inflammation, wonky lipid profiles, and the accumulation of metabolic mayhem that overworks our most vital system. So partner with your doctor to track advanced lipid markers like ApoB, lipoprotein a, increase your intake of anti-inflammatory omega-3s, and prioritize exercise, including HIIT exercises, aerobic activities, zone 2 training to grow fresh new blood vessels. Then we've got cancer. So cancer might seem rather capricious, based on luck, but actually many cases, in fact, some would argue the vast majority of cancer cases are actually rooted in the gradual breakdown of our cellular checks and balances in a preventable way. So when chronic inflammation, insulin dysregulation, and DNA damage reach a critical mass, our cells mutiny and begin to replicate unchecked, causing cancer. We are far from powerless in this equation. It turns out that we can do things to prevent cancer from happening in most cases. I'm not talking about those heritable cancers or the genes that really highly promote certain types of cancers, things you've heard about like BRCA, for example. We're talking about the more everyday types of cancer like the colon cancers, or pancreatic cancer even is very tied to our metabolic health. There's a lot of different types of cancers that actually are preventable. It's just that it feels overwhelming to prevent them because so many things contribute to the development of cancer. So what can you do? You can safeguard your metabolic health, first of all, because that has a really key role in whether or not cancer develops over time. So strength training, smart carbs, and taking care to eat anti-inflammatory, antioxidant-rich plant foods, and not missing early cancer screening. These are fantastic tools in your toolkit to prevent cancer or fight it early. Now, let's talk about the brain. The brain is also deeply affected by all of these systemic breakdowns. So when we talk about heart disease, we often talk about plaque buildup, atherosclerosis. The same kind of process actually plays a role in dementia and the breakdown of our brain. And it also can lead to strokes, which everyone's familiar with because it's so dramatic. It's like a heart attack, except a brain attack. So we can prevent, of course, the metabolic disorder like we discussed, and we can also help control chronic hypertension, which is a major player in the development of brain diseases like strokes. What can you do? So first of all, you've got to know your numbers, measure your blood pressure so you actually know whether or not they're in a healthy range. Work with your doctor, exercise more, and make sure that you've got a stress-busting regular practice to keep your stress in place and to build up that emotional resilience. Let's also talk about accidents. So we often think of accidents as freak occurrences beyond our control, but there are many things that we can do to prevent accidents from happening. Fatigue, distraction, intoxication, and physical fragility all increase our odds of becoming an accident statistic. So fortify your body and your brain with the right inputs to don this invisible shield and helmet, and actually use helmets and seatbelts. But what are some more things you can do? Commit to 7 to 9 hours of nightly sleep to keep your reaction time sharp so you don't get into car accidents, for example. Incorporate balance and mobility drills into your movement routine. So we always talk about, running, cardio exercise, and also strength building. But you also want to maintain agility and nimbleness so that you can catch yourself if you're about to fall. And never drive distracted, whether that means texting on the phone or, even talking on the phone sometimes can be very distracting. You just want to make sure that you're eliminating any of the obvious risks to your health. And finally, I want to talk about mental health for a moment because it's not just some touchy-feely luxury. It's the ultimate driver of every single health metric that we care about. So chronic psychological stress can accelerate aging, dampen our immune defenses, and really leach the enjoyment from our days. When it gets really extreme, we still lose too many people to self-harm and suicide. And conversely, having a robust mental health system can be a force multiplier for every single positive habit and pursuit. And there are so many ways to improve your mental health and resilience. First, you've got to move your body in ways that will energize your mind. Even a 10-minute walk can be a potent antidepressant as long as you're doing it frequently and regularly. Also, you'll want to cultivate restorative practices that help you find your center when the world feels off kilter. And if you're struggling, reach out. Connection is the ultimate medicine for the soul. So I know that this is a lot of stuff and there's many more topics that I didn't cover here, but we're not aiming for perfection. I'm just bringing up these topics because they might be the highest yield deposits that you can make in your health investment strategy. Now let's take a moment to acknowledge an uncomfortable truth. Just like with financial wealth, we don't all start out on equal footing when it comes to our health. Some of us are simply dealt a better hand from day one. So imagine health as a form of inherited wealth, a trust fund for debts that we didn't choose, but those that fundamentally shape our options and trajectory. Some of us start out with a flush health account, good genetics, ample access to nutritious food, safe neighborhoods to play in, and parents who are emotionally stable and have the knowledge and means to invest in our well-being from an early age. For others, that starting balance is a lot lower. They might have limited access to health resources, early exposure to toxic stress, or may live in medical deserts with little preventive care. These social determinants, the conditions in which we're born, live, work, and age, are the often invisible forces that can put us ahead or behind in our health journey, sometimes before we even take our first step. And over a lifetime, these advantages or disadvantages will compound, just like financial interest. A child who grows up breathing clean air and eating nourishing meals might enjoy a biological wealth that pays dividends for decades, whereas one exposed to pollution and food insecurity might bear those health costs for just as long. But, and this is crucial, a lower starting balance is not a life sentence, just as being born with a silver spoon in your mouth is not a guarantee of lifelong wealth. Even someone born into the lap of luxury can squander their fortune with reckless investments and risky behaviors, like a trust fund baby who fritters away their inheritance on yachts and illegal dealings to end up in the red. The same goes with health. We all know to great health, to every genetic advantage, who still wind up in poor health and dying too early due to years of neglect and abuse. And on the flip side, we've got lots of rags to riches tales, penniless folks who become titans of industry, high school dropouts who build billion-dollar businesses. These pauper to princes stories are powerful reminders that our starring circumstances don't dictate our destiny. And with today's medical advances, we have more tools than ever to write our own health success stories, no matter how little we start with. So the beauty of renewable health is that we can make investments in our sleep, nutrition, our movement, our stress resilience, and that's available to all of us, no matter what our health inheritance is at the beginning of life. Making small deposits regularly can grow and compound over time, putting control back in our hands. Sometimes it can feel so hard, and I know a lot of people resign themselves to the hand that they're dealt, but that comes at a steep cost. Accepting poor health as inevitable only widens those disparities over time, leading to vastly different qualities of life. And this is our one chance to experience life. So don't squander it. You might have been dealt a bad hand at the beginning of life, but it doesn't mean that you can't improve on it. I always like to make the point that the most important step that a person can take is the very next one. So the next choice you make, whether that means a nutritious meal or an early bedtime tonight, even though you've been, staying up late every single day this entire month, really matters. And that step, even if you've been sort of failing recently, is a step towards reclaiming your health agency. You stop being a passive recipient of health inheritance and start becoming active investors in your own well-being. Now, what if we thought of our health as the ultimate insurance policy? This is a plan that protects not only our physical well-being, but our capacity to experience all that life has to offer. So when it comes to insuring our cars, our homes, or our valuables, we don't think twice about signing an insurance policy because we get that even in the best case scenario, even if we're the absolute safest drivers or the most responsible homeowners, we can't control every variable. Accidents happen, whether we're ready for them or not. And it turns out that our health is no different. Even if we're doing everything right, fueling our bodies with nourishing foods and moving with joy and intention and, connecting with our friends and family, we can't inoculate ourselves from the realities of being human. So even, we talked about the randomness of accidents, but there's also randomness of genes. Sometimes a gene just mutates and then results in a cancer. These all introduce elements of chance into the equation. So what I'm talking about now is building a resilient health infrastructure to protect ourselves, just as an insurance policy protects you against accidents. If you have a really resilient foundation of health, that protects you against the randomness of health accidents or health outcomes that you might not have as much control over. So So this isn't like controlling specifically, like we talked about for, preventing cancer or preventing heart disease. This is a more general health foundation that you want to build against the randomness of life events, of health events, the accidents of our genes, the accidents of events that occur to us. And just to really nail the point home that, taking care of your health is really, really important. And it's much more important to start today than you might think. So if the earlier you start, the lower the costs of our so-called premiums. So in our 20s and 30s, our bodies are veritable powerhouses. They can rebound from the late nights, the haphazard habits with just, a couple of days of eating healthier and maybe a quick sauna session. But the cumulative effects of our choices, both good and bad, are compounding beneath the surface. And as we move into our 40s and beyond, the bill for biological neglect comes at a much greater cost. So that borderline high blood pressure might have contributed to the memory loss that you're starting to experience. Or, maybe you're starting to feel some brain fog or some lethargy, some fatigue, or some aches in your body that didn't used to be there. These are our body's way of sending up a flare. It's time to pay the piper. It's never too late to start again, like I said before, but I just want to nail the point home that the earlier you start, the lower the premiums, just like with many other aspects of insurance. The earlier you start paying premiums, the lower your premiums will be later in your home ownership plan or your car insurance plan. Let's bring together everything we've explored today into a practical framework that transforms all of these insights into action. We covered a lot of ground, from renewable energy to risk management to health equity and biological insurance. And now what matters most is how you'll put this knowledge to work in your own life. The health is wealth framework means treating your health just as you would your financial assets. So step one is audit your health assets and liabilities. So just as a savvy financial investor assesses their portfolio before making moves, we need to have a clear-eyed look at your biological balance sheet. So this means mapping out your major risk factors, those high interest debts like cardiovascular disease and metabolic dysfunction that could bankrupt your health if you leave it unchecked. So get those advanced biomarkers tested. Think of them as your quarterly biological earnings report. You also want to understand your genetic inheritance, that hand that you've been dealt that tells you where you might need some extra attention. You'll also want to assess your daily habits. So one deposit or withdrawal is not going to make a huge difference unless it's a giant deposit or withdrawal, but regular smaller deposits and withdrawals can add up. So you want to make sure that you're assessing your more regular daily habits and tackle those big risks first. So the lowest hanging fruit, the biggest risk to your health, whether that might be your heart health or maybe that pre-diabetes that's creeping in, or perhaps you've just never hit the gym ever in your life before. These are all low-hanging fruit that you want to hit up first. And you want to build up your renewable health system. So we want to turn from using fossil fuels to operating on renewable energy. So that means rather than just taking away from your body, taking away from your sleep, you want to optimize your sleep so that you get nightly biological restoration. You want to get regular exercise, that you're pumping up your health of your brain, of your body regularly. And you want to build up your emotional resilience so that you can fight against stress as it's happening. And next, I want to talk about diversifying your health portfolio. Just as you wouldn't want to put all your money in one stock, we want to build a balanced health portfolio. I know some people out there, they're like, if you just go keto, everything will be solved. Or if you just go carnivore, then the rest of your health will follow. That's really not the case. So just as with finances, you want to diversify your health portfolio. It's eating well, a balanced diet. It's blending your cardio and strength training and mixing high intensity work with restorative practices, balancing your structured exercises with natural movement, in between meetings at your desk. And then we talked about healthy habits. So the next step is automating your health savings. So making those health investments easier by turning up the default settings for success. So design your environment for success. For example, I have a walking treadmill under my desk so that I can just turn it on and walk really easily. And you might want to park farther away from your workplace so that you walk a bit more to get to your car. Or you might want to lay out your gym clothes the night before so that it makes it easier for you the morning of to just go to the gym. Meal prepping at the beginning of the week on a Sunday, that can be a really easy way to make sure you have good, tasty food ready and available for you so you're not reaching for junk food. We talked about a lot today, but here's what I want you to remember. While money can always be earned, borrowed, or inherited, your health is the one asset that truly belongs to you alone. Every choice you make, from how you move to what you eat, how you sleep to how you manage stress, it's like an investment or withdrawal from your biological bank account. And just like compound interest needs time to work its magic, the small, consistent deposits you make in your health today are going to yield exponential returns in the future. So, sleeping well, mindful moments aren't just simple, healthy choices. They're investments in a future where your time isn't just abundant, but overflowing with vitality, possibility, and joy. So, I want to leave you with this one question. What's one high yield health investment you can make today? Because a single choice, that one conscious decision to prioritize your well being, could be the first step towards your richest, healthiest life.